Hi everyone, it's Keith here, Admin and Finance Director at New Youth for Christ. Welcome to day 2 of Elijah and Elisha week, and today we're looking at 1 Kings chapter 18. So we start off with God telling the prophet Elijah to present himself to the king of Israel, who's Ahab, and to tell him that God will be sending rain on the land. Now at this point in time there's been a severe famine in Israel, and the land is dry, there's a drought. Ahab's the king of Israel, and he's really not a good king. So Elijah comes before Ahab and they meet, because at this point Israel had abandoned the Lord as God and they were worshipping Baal. Elijah then tells Ahab to summon 450 prophets of Baal and for them all to assemble on Mount Carmel, which they do, and there's a crowd of people there as well. Elijah turns to the people and he says to them, "How long will you waver between worshipping two gods?" Elijah says, "Look, I'm the last of God's prophets and I'm challenging these 450 prophets of Baal to see who is the real God." And the way they do this is they both sacrifice a bull and they chop it into pieces and place it on wood. Elijah says whichever God sets fire to the offering is the true God, so they don't light the fire themselves. So Baal's prophets spend the whole day calling out to Baal, all 450 of them dancing around the altar. And during the day, Elijah's taunting them, saying, well, perhaps he's thinking, perhaps Baal's thinking at the moment, or perhaps he's busy. So we go the whole day, and by the evening, nothing has happened to their offering. And Elijah calls them over. Then he says to people, "Take 4 large jars of water and pour it over the offering." And he says to them, do this 3 times. So they do it 3 times, and it says that everything is soaked through with water. Then Elijah steps forward in front of the people, in front of the altar, and he calls to God. I'm going to read what he says. He says, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac and Israel." So he's reminding the people who he's talking to, that it's the God of their ancestors. He says, "Let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and I've done all the things at your command." So he's saying to the people, as well as God, that, look, I'm doing only what God's told me to do. And he says, "Answer me, Lord, answer me, so that these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back to them." And that's all he says. But then immediately fire falls down from the sky and burns up everything. It burns up the sacrificed bull, burns up the wood, the stones, the soil, and it burns up and evaporates all the water that's in the trench. And when the people see this, they fall to the ground and worship God, and they say, "Yes, the Lord is God." Elijah then has all of Baal's prophets seized and they are killed. And then Elijah tells Ahab to go and eat and drink, because he says there's heavy rain coming. He then himself climbs up to the top of Mount Carmel, and it says he bends down and prays to God. Then Elijah tells his servant to go and look towards the sea. And 6 times the servant does this and comes back and tells Elijah that he's seen nothing. And Elijah sends him back again. 7th time he comes back and reports that he can see a cloud that's the size of a hand, like this big, rising from the sea. So Elijah says to his servant, "Go and tell Ahab to get into his chariot and to get down off of the mount before the rain stops him from doing it." The skies start to fill with clouds, the winds rise, and a heavy rain comes, which puts an end to the famine and the drought. And this is all happening as Ahab's riding off. And the last thing it says in the passage we're looking at today, it says, "The power of the Lord came upon Elijah, and he runs ahead of Ahab, who was in his chariot being pulled by horses, all the way down the mount to the town of Jezreel." So what can we learn and draw from this passage? I think it shows to us the importance of having faith and trusting God and his promises and what the Bible teaches us, even in times of difficulty or when everyone or everything appears to be against us. Elijah was confident in what God had told him to do. He went and did it, and he was confident that God would answer his prayer when he came up against the prophets of Baal. And I think we need to have that same confidence that God will hear our prayers as well. We also need to be aware whether God is speaking to us through other people or through what may be happening around us. Elijah used Obadiah to fulfill part of his will. By looking at the story, that's not to say that everything in our everyday lives will necessarily be as big as challenging 450 prophets of another God, or anything as dramatic as this story. It may be that all we're asked to do by God is just to live our lives properly and for him. So we live our lives as the Bible teaches us, which, let's be honest, for all of us, sometimes can be hard enough anyway. And we always need to be ready to hear from God. And when you're confident or sure that you have heard from God, to have faith and courage to act on what God's asked you to do. But just because God is speaking to you, it doesn't mean he's always going to ask you to do something that's bad or difficult. He might be asking you to do something that you really like or you really enjoy. And if you're not sure if God's speaking to you or not, then please talk to someone you trust who might have the experience to help. And remember, God won't be asking you to do anything that cuts across what the Bible teaches us and what Jesus teaches us. And we need to remember with all of these Old Testament stories that these happened before Jesus came to earth to die for us on the cross. So let me leave you today with some questions. Is God trying to speak to you about anything in your life at the moment? Are you challenged to get to know him and get to know his word better so you can recognize when God is talking to you? Are you in a tough place at the moment trying to hold on to God's promises? Being in a tough place is something that can happen to all of us at any time. There's something in my life at the moment that I'm finding really tough. So please be encouraged if you are going through the same thing, that you're not alone. Let me encourage you again today to trust in God. He knows what's best for you, what's best for all of us. But if you've got any comments or questions on what I've said today, please leave it in the comments below. Don't forget also we have Bible study notes available for each week of our videos. So ask your youth leader to download the notes from our website, and you can do a Bible study together on Zoom. And last but not least, don't forget on Fridays at 4 p.m, Kwaku and Amy will be getting together for Life Words Unpacked, 4 p.m. live on our Instagram page. Join them there. You can talk about the videos or just have a chat, discussion, ask them any questions you want. They'd love to chat to you live online. That's it for me. God bless you everyone, and join us again for another Life Words video.